Hi dear fans, friends and subscribers, welcome to the Cricket Happening show today with your host Ram. I know dear fans, friends and subscribers, you have been pretty disappointed that you couldn't actually see me yesterday. Well, a lot of other work commitments going on with a lot of responsibilities, and that's the reason I couldn't come. I definitely wanted to come because there was some very interesting event that happened yesterday. New Zealand won the match against the West Indies. They in fact won won a fiercely contested Test series, which concluded yesterday at Kensington Oval, Bridgetown in Barbados, with New Zealand setting up the target. As expected, Brendon McCullum, the New Zealand captain, declined the innings close at the overnight score, and West Indies losing the third Test match by a big margin, not a big margin, but a margin of, in fact, New Zealand winning the match by 53 runs. So the target was set for them, but well, the target was almost, if you take 24 runs out of the target that was given, 317 was what West Indies made in the second dig, and 331 was what New Zealand made. So they essentially required 307 runs to win, and well, it was as expected. Brendon McCullum, the New Zealand captain, decided to accept the challenge and declared the innings closed, and allowing the West Indies batting to come in and show their prowess in the second innings. But well, West Indies definitely failed. They failed by 53 runs as they lost this match. But what was very important, so since the match is already over, and I just want to touch on a few things here. And well, West Indies managed 254 all out as far as the bowling was concerned. Just wanting to tell you what really happened. The West Indies started off with Gale and Brathwaite at the crease, chasing 307, and but for West Indies, the chase started off in a very dismal manner, as first Brathwaite was the first to go, as Trent Boult got a ball to go on and hit the stumps of Brathwaite, and that was something which went off an inside edge of the bowling of Boult. So Brathwaite was the first to go, bowled by Trent Boult for 6. That made it 7 for 1. Kirk Edwards came in and joined Chris Gale. Chris Gale was also a bit sedate. There was no attacking stuff coming from Gale, and also the bowling, one has to say that Trent Boult and Tim Southee were absolutely on the mark, and both of them kept the batsman quiet, and then Trent Boult was the man who provided the double breakthrough for them as he went past Kirk Edwards. Now Kirk Edwards got a delivery which actually he's trying to drag the delivery. The ball took the outside edge of the bat and was snapped up by Ross Taylor in the slips as he was gone for 10, and the score read 23 for 2. After that, Chris Gale left to the pavilion as Southee got a ball which Chris Gale was trying to actually go for a booming drive past the offside, but the ball actually first hit the bat, then went on to hit his pad, and inside edged onto his stumps. In fact, the ball took the edge of the bat, then onto the pad, and onto the stump she went, and Gale was a goner. Bowled Southee for 11 with no boundaries. And suddenly these West Indies innings were looking a bit real ragged at 31 for 3, and now the mantra was to survive the final day. Now and after that, Chanderpaul and Darren Bravo were at the crease. Now Darren Bravo, well, he really played some very good strokes. Chanderpaul tried to occupy the crease, and both of them pushed the score to 81. So it was a partnership worth 50 runs, but after that it was Mark Craig, the right arm off spinner, drawing Chanderpaul down the crease. In fact, Chanderpaul was lured into actually trying to lift the ball from Craig, but in that attempt he was actually stumped by Watling of the bowling of Craig for 25 with 2 boundaries, which made the score 81 for 4. Dinesh Ramadhin, the wicketkeeper captain, came in and joined Darren Bravo, and well, Ramadhin I thought Ramadhin played a few good strokes, I would say, in his knock of 29, before Tim Southee took his wicket caught by Taylor for 29, the 2 fours and 1 6, and half the West Indies side was into the pavilion with a score on 122. Darren Bravo, who was actually looking good at that stage, was well taken by Williamson of the bowling of Southee for 40 with 6 fours, and that was 129 for 6. And Kemar Roach came in, but Kemar Roach came in and couldn't do much as it was Mark Craig. And suddenly what one saw was that the ball was bouncing, the ball was turning, and that being the final day, there was definitely some purchase there for the spinners, and Mark Craig was the one who took immense advantage out of it as he picked up the Kemar Roach wicket by getting him caught in the closing cordon for 7, which made the score 144 for 7. Jason Holder came in, and Shillingford was at the other end, and then there was a bit of a good partnership. In fact, from 144 for 7, New Zealand probably thought that now it's time for them to wrap up the match, but Jason Holder, who really impressed with the bat in the this was his test debut, as you know, and it has been a very decent test debut for Jason Holder with the bat as well as the ball, and especially with the bat. We saw that he played some strokes that would have really made a top batsman proud in the West Indies, and today once again he continued in the same vein, but also presenting some door defense there, and he was in the company of Shane Shillingford, and both of them started also playing some very good strokes. And in fact, what they did best was they when the score was 144 for 7, the approach shown by Jason Holder and Shane Shillingford was very good to see. They decided that there's no point in going for the strokes, but trying to survive the day off. But it really didn't really help. But what the good thing that they did is that they delayed the inevitable by putting on a stand of 87 runs, which really frustrated the New Zealand bowlers. And then finally Jason Holder, after reaching his 50 and making 52 with 3 fours and 1 6, was gone as Mark Craig got a ball to snake in onto his stumps, and he was gone for 52. After that, it was pretty quick work. It was Neil Wagner who picked up his first wicket in the second innings when he had the wicket of Suleiman Bent for 10, 2 boundaries. Jerome Taylor resisted a brief while, but after that, finally the death knell was sounded for the West Indies as Trent Boult, who initially did the early damage, came in and completely cleaned up the match for the New Zealanders by actually getting Jerome Taylor LBW for 12, and we finally saw that Shane Shillingford was not out on 30 with 2 fours, and West Indies, in their effort to chase 307 for victory on the final day of the Kensington Oval Test, that is the third and final Test match of the series, were all out for 254, thus losing by 53 runs. And New Zealand, in registering this victory, what they did is, away from home, New Zealand have never won a match, they have not won a match against a top-ranked Test team. Not top-ranked Test team, basically any team which comes into the from 1 to number 8. And what they did best was they beat the West Indies. So this is something, I would say this is a historical victory for them. And what was another good thing is that what a series we had. They were locked at 1-1 after 2 tests, and the third Test match was taken by New Zealand, and the verdict then read New Zealand 2, West Indies 1. So West Indies were tamed in their own den by the New Zealanders. Let's have a look at the bowling figures. Trent Boult, 16.2 overs, 1 maiden, 48 runs and 3 wickets, really did the early damage and really piled on the pressure on the West Indies. Tim Southee bowling in the good area, 16 overs, 4 maidens, 28 runs and 3 wickets. Mark Craig was the other one who shared in the spoils there, taking advantage of the good turn and bounce that was available in the pitch on the final day. 28 overs, 7 maidens, 84 runs and 3 wickets. 16 overs, 3 maidens, 1 for 50. So Neil Wagner, who did a wonderful job in the first innings, really didn't get his bearings right. He picked up 1 wicket for 50 runs. Neesham Ball, 3 overs, 1 maiden, none for 9. Kane Williamson, 3 overs, no maiden, none for 16. Now, just wanting to look at the series that panned out here for West Indies. Well, the worries that West Indies had, according to me, it was a very, very well contested series, no doubt about that. But looking at this West Indies squad, one thought that the openers, definitely Brathwaite and Edwards definitely played well in the series. I'm not denying that. Chris Gayle could have Chris Gayle also did, but probably what was lacking as far as West Indies was concerned was the consistency part of it. Now that is something they need to concentrate on. Shivnarine Chanderpaul, one did not see any big innings coming from him, unfortunately, and that was something pretty sad. So that is also something that really would have hurt the West Indies. Other than that, the gain for them, I thought, was Jason Holder making his test debut as an all-rounder, because not only did he do well, he really fitted that job of an all-rounder, as he contributed with both bat and ball. It was pretty impressive. But one has been very impressed as far as the bowling is concerned from the West Indians. Jerome, especially Kemar Rose, who took an 8-wicket back in this particular test match. Kemar Rose, Jerome Taylor, and the problem for West Indies that one could see in this particular series was that they say that the bowlers hunt in pairs. Now the problem is that sometimes Jerome Taylor used to bowl well, but Kemar Rose was a bit off the mark. Kemar Rose used to bowl well, Jerome Taylor was a bit off the mark. So basically things were not gelling well for them as far as the pace department is concerned. I mean, everything, it was not coming together, and that is what is definitely needs to be done. Jason Holder, as I said, was very impressive with this bowling, no doubt about that, especially on his test debut. I thought it was a good selection. The spinners, well, Shane Shillingford absolutely crippled by not using his doosra because of the ICC restrictions, and he had his troubles there. But Kemar Rose, Suleiman Ben, I thought played a fine role. He definitely marked this comeback into the West Indies team with a lot of pomp, I would say. But Suleiman Ben in the final test match and especially in the final innings, he couldn't really get his bearings right. Other than that, I thought it was. Now let's have a look at New Zealand. That is as far as the West Indians are concerned. Now for New Zealand, what one thought of Tom Latham, as in the previous two tests he showed some very good consistency, but after that I thought he tailed out a bit. Hamish Rutherford, I would have to say that Hamish Rutherford has been given a long rope by New Zealand selectors, and definitely I'm sure the New Zealand selectors are seeing some substance in Hamish Rutherford. Now, seeing Hamish Rutherford, well, he does not have he does not have the, if I'm not wrong, he's Ken Rutherford's son, Hamish Rutherford. And Ken Rutherford, one would remember, if at all people who are following the cricket in the exterior, I do remember New Zealand's policy that Ken Rutherford, the father of Hamish Rutherford, was actually making his debut against the West Indies. He was given a long rope. There was a 5-test series which was played between New Zealand and West Indies, and Ken Rutherford was there in the team, and if you look at his, if you could really go into the records and see his initial batting stats was 0-0-1-0-0, like he had 3 or 4 blobs against the West Indies, and that was a West Indies which was a mighty West Indies team. It had a pace barrage at the time. But what was good about these New Zealand selectors was that they persisted with Ken Rutherford, and finally he came back in a big way. In fact, that really helped. Now that is something that New Zealand had done in the past for many players, and especially Ken Rutherford one really remembers, because that was the time I was following cricket in a big way during my childhood days. And Hamish Rutherford also, not to that degree, but Hamish Rutherford is a person who actually likes to play his strokes. But I thought Hamish Rutherford was given an opportunity, has really muffed that opportunity. Kane Williamson, well, he's definitely turning out into a world-class batsman now. 7 centuries under his belt, and he has really come of age. In the sense, Kane Williamson now, one can safely say that we are seeing another, he has taken probably, one was expecting Ross Taylor to become a Martin Crowe, but now I would say that, Ross Taylor, I know Ross Taylor has played a lot of test matches, and he's a pretty inexperienced bloke, but my impression was that when Ross Taylor made his debut, I thought he would be another Martin Crowe, but now I can very safely say that Kane Williamson, I look at a real Martin Crowe there in the making. I mean, he's definitely a test regular, no doubt about it. Classic player, good technique, and well, that is what is all the ingredients that I wanted to actually get your success in Test cricket, and he perfectly fits the bill. Brendan McCullum, I thought he had a dismal series, not even picking up a single 50. In fact, I thought he probably got some 40 odd runs. Other than that, I don't think he picked up a single 50. So that is something which would be a sort of a question mark, and they definitely need to look into that. Jimmy Neesham, every time I said he has come to the crease, he has looked a very impressive player. I think he's the grain for New Zealand. Like how West Indies have gained through Jason Holder, I think Jimmy Neesham should be the biggest gain for New Zealand in this particular series. He had 2 centuries, I thought, in this particular series. Sorry, I thought he had 1 century, if I'm not wrong. And then they have BJ Watling, who is a very solid wicketkeeper batsman. And the bowling has been very good. Tim Southee I thought he bowled very impressively. He got good company from Trent Boult. Neil Wagner was impressive. Mark Craig is another big gain. I thought when we talk about gains other than Neesham, I should probably turn the thing a bit further and say that for me, Mark Craig was the find of the series for New Zealand, because not only is Ryan a spinner, but he also showed us that he can come here when the chips are down, and he could really show his batting, that he's no mug with the bat, and he's not only a person who can play the strokes. If the need be, he could also block the deliveries, and that's what he precisely showed in this particular Test series. So Mark Craig is something of a big gain for New Zealand out of this series. So really, I would say good luck to Mark Craig for the future Test, because I think looking at the way he has played, I don't see any reason why Mark Craig should be left out in preference to anybody. I think Mark Craig could really should be someone who should be playing on a very regular basis for New Zealand now. From here, I'm going to just shift the attention. We are going to a match where India, once again, as you know, India are in England. The first match they played against Leicestershire, I definitely told you that the Indian bowlers were sent on a leather hunt, and let me tell you very sadly that the Indian bowlers are looking a ragged outfit even after the first match. That was a warm-up match. This was the second match which happened today. Today was the first day of the first day's play between Derbyshire and the Indians, and once again Derbyshire putting up a very good score on the board of 326 for 5, and once again the focus has been the Indian bowlers. If you look at the bowlers that India have used, this happened in the first warm-up match too. This is the second warm-up game before the July 9 first Test, which starts at Trent Bridge. And I'm very sorry to say that this Indian bowling is really looking like a ragged outfit here, because Bhuvneshwar Kumar 13 overs 3 maidens 1 for 24, Pankaj Singh 14 overs 3 maidens 1 for 63, Varun Arun 12 overs 4 maidens 1 for 45. They have been playing all their pace bowlers. The pace bowlers have looked absolutely listless here. 12 overs 1 maiden none for 49 for Ishan Sharma, the most experienced bloke who has played a lot of cricket in England. Jadeja, I thought, was the pick of the bowlers. 11 overs 3 maidens 27 runs and 2 wickets. Ishwar Pandey 11 overs 2 maidens 1 for 34. Stuart Binney, I thought, bowled with a semblance of respectability. 11 overs 2 maidens 1 for 34 for him. Ashwin 7 overs for 25. Mahendra Singh Dhoni, the captain himself, wheeled his arm over for 11 runs. As far as Derbyshire was concerned, for Derbyshire, they had Slater at the top of the order making 54 with 9 boundaries. Boddington was out for naught. Hughes made 23 with 4 boundaries. Gordleman not out 67 with 8 fours. Hughes bowled Pandey 1. Durston played a very impressive knock of 95 with 14 fours and 2 sixes. Hussain was not out 53 with 8 fours. But what I would like to say here, looking at the Derbyshire team, we don't see any batsmen, in the sense we don't see any players who are really in the top or are actually knocking on the doors of English cricket. Now, considering that, I thought the Indian bowling, I think it's a big question mark, because let us remember one thing, that India will be playing against England in the first Test match. at Trent Bridge, and this is not a thing that India would have thought they would have done. The bowling is looking absolutely ragged, and they definitely is the bowling is, according to me now, is going to be a huge question mark when India take on England, unless and until they're really going to roll up their sleeves and show what their bowling is all about. So it essentially, what it means to me here is that the Indian bowlers are really struggling to adjust to the English climes, and they are also finding probably a bit difficult to actually control the movement of the ball in English conditions. Now that is something they really need to take it on and get it right as quickly as possible, lest it's too late for them for the first test against England, which would be I think I definitely, after looking at these two performances, I have to very easily say that well, the Indian bowling leaves a lot to be decided, especially the pace attack is something that India have to really work on. Otherwise, I thought the England pace bowlers, we all know what havoc they are capable of wreaking in. But for India, they definitely have something to do here. I hope they are going to learn their lessons and they could be better. Without further ado, I think the Indian bowlers have to really come to the party now, because otherwise that is going to be something which is going to really trouble them. Well, dear fan subscribers, from here let me get on to another match, and this is a match which happened between Netherlands and Scotland at Glasgow. Netherlands were the ones who actually won the match. They made 252 for 9, batting first. Swart made 62, Rippon was 49 not out. Scotland couldn't get on to the Netherlands score. They finished on 208 all out. Gardiner 52, and for Netherlands, Mudassar Bukhari picked up 321, and Van Meekeren picking up 3 wickets for 40 runs. Well, dear fans and subscribers, nothing else to really add. As I said yesterday, due to shortage of time, I couldn't come on, but today I'm back here, and I wanted to talk to you about the historic series victory that New Zealand had over West Indies at Kensington Oval, Bridgetown, Barbados on the final day of the series. And what a series that was! I mean, cricket couldn't have got more interesting than what it all happened at the Kensington Oval, Bridgetown in Barbados. Well, dear fans and subscribers, on this particular note, your host Ram is about to take leave on this Cricket Happening Show, promising you the Cricket Happening Show is something which happens on a regular basis, and you will be seeing me tomorrow on my next Cricket Happening Show. Until then, it's goodbye from your host Ram's studios. Thank you.